Hello and welcome to Cosmological Arguments. I'm your host, John Bannan. Hey theists out there, does the black universe give you nightmares or cold sweats? Well, I've got the cure. It's called the arrow of time. The black universe, or God forbid, an infinite black multiverse, is essentially an idea that derives from Einstein's theory of general relativity. And the black universe says that space, time, and time began with the expanded singularity in Big Bang cosmology, and the universe has been expanding ever since for about 13.8 billion years to the present day. So the black universe looks like a block of space-time. I'll draw it for you to give you a rough idea of what I'm talking about. So this roughly looks like a block. What this represents is um, slices of space-time from the Big Bang to the present day. So this would be the present day slice of the universe's space-time. And through those 13.8 billion years, you have slices of space-time as time goes by. So each of these represents a slice of space-time. And this is the generally accepted understanding of the expansion of the universe in terms of general relativity. And you notice in this block universe, there's an arrow pointing out, which means time is going in this direction as the universe expands and gets wider. Now, you can even compound on this idea of a block universe and hypothetically propose the existence of an infinite block multiverse. Now, the block universe is generally atheistic. And the reason is because in the block universe, or the B theory of time, says that the past, present, and future are all real. It just so happens that we are in the present moment, but the present moment isn't any more special than the past moments or the future moments. They're all equally real in the block universe. So the entire block universe is a reality and exists. And we just happen to be at one moment in it, and our lives are really just a line or a geodesic in the block universe. Starts at one point and then it goes a certain time and then it ends. And essentially that's what we are. We're basically a fixture, a line, or a structure that is a geodesic in a block universe. So the block universe, first of all, it says that time is an illusion, and that it's a trick of the brain. And the reality is the past, present, and future are all real, and they still exist. So what that means is that all the decisions that are made in reality have already been made. They already exist. It's all basically determined. in advance. And as far as God goes, well, it already exists. So what is there for God to create or to do? The answer would be the only thing is really to create the Big Bang itself. And that's it. This is really a set it and forget it type of universe. God creates it. It's all essentially predetermined in this block universe. And that's it. So God makes one decision, and that's the entire universe's creation as a block universe, and it just proceeds. So God only does one thing, creates a block universe, and doesn't intervene in history anymore. Because that one act of creation is all he needed to do everything that ever happens in the block universe. So the block universe really limits God's role to just basically the creator of the singularity, or the expanded singularity in Big Bang cosmology, and that's it. It's a set it and forget it universe. It's a universe that God doesn't directly intervene in because it's all, everything that's ever going to happen is already cooked in to the initial creation. So an infinite block multiverse is along the same lines, except that an infinite block multiverse would be an infinite number of block universes, and that would cover every logical possibility for physical reality. So whereas God here at least has to decide what physical reality will be in the block universe, in an infinite block multiverse, God doesn't even make that decision, because every possibility that could ever be is covered somewhere in some block universe in an infinite multiverse. So an infinite block multiverse, that idea really almost eliminates the need for a God at all. And if you don't have a role for God, or you have a very limited role for God, the theist has a problem, because the atheist can argue, well, God is an unnecessary added assumption. We don't need God. So why should you believe God exists? God should be eliminated under Occam's razor. And that's a good argument. It's a good argument. So the existence of something like an infinite block multiverse is really bad news for theists. And the block universe isn't that good news either, because it limits God's role to this one point. So the block universe and the infinite block multiverse can really cause big problems for the belief in the existence of God. Now, there are ways out of this problem. First and foremost, the infinite block multiverse has never been proven to be true. And in fact, you can't prove it to be true, because you'd have to prove a multiverse, which you can't do because you'd have to leave this universe, which you can't because of the principle of conservation of energy and mass, or you'd have to travel faster than the speed of light to prove that the universe is infinite. And even then, you can never prove the universe is infinite, because you can never travel far enough to prove an infinity, because you'd have to travel an infinite amount. And you can't travel an infinite amount. There will always be some amount you can't travel. So if you keep traveling, I can always say, well, yeah, keep going. Keep going. You haven't reached the end yet. And that will continue forever. So the infinite block multiverse is unprovable. The block universe is also unprovable. And the reason is because you can't leave the present moment in order to prove that the past is real or the future is real. You would have to time travel, and time travel is impossible, and time travel involves paradoxes. So you can't do it anyway. You know, the paradox of what happens if you go back in time and you shoot your parents dead before you were conceived? So you're looking over your dead parent's body, and there you are holding the gun. Well, you've just destroyed your causal history. So where did you come from? You're not going to exist. So where did you come from? Well, you came from nothing, but that's impossible. Nothing can't create something. So time travel is full of paradoxes. So it's impossible to travel in time and prove that a block universe is real. The block universe is based on the mathematics of general relativity. And that's because the calculus used in general relativity includes infinities. And it makes no distinction between the past, present, and the future. It's just math. So it's a mathematical model. The block universe is a mathematical model. It's the model that underlies the highly successful theory of general relativity. But nonetheless, it's a mathematical model, and it hasn't been proven to be true in physical reality. However, I'm going to tell you why you can know that the block universe and an infinite block multiverse can't be real. In physics, there's something called the arrow of time. Now, the arrow of time is an unsolved problem in physics. What that means is no physics theory can explain the arrow of time. The block universe can't explain the arrow of time. Einstein's theory of relativity cannot explain the arrow of time. Quantum mechanics cannot explain the arrow of time. There is no physics theory that can explain the arrow of time. So what is the arrow of time? Well, the arrow of time is simple. It is that we experience forward motion in time. We don't experience backward motion in time. That's plainly obvious. So in a block universe, the arrow of time goes this way, forward through time. And when we live in this, our beginning and end follows this arrow, forward in time. There is nothing in the universe that goes in the opposite direction. So the arrow of time only goes in one direction, that way. It doesn't go in the other way. But under the laws of physics, there's no reason why it shouldn't go that way. The calculus and the mathematics works regardless of which direction you go. So, this is an unsolved problem in physics. Now, how do we know that the arrow of time is in fact going this way? How do we know we're going into the future? Well, we all know we're going into the future because we remember the past and we don't know the future and we're going into the future. But if that doesn't convince you, there's something called the second law of thermodynamics. Now, the second law of thermodynamics states that entropy tends to increase with time in an isolated system. Entropy is a measure of disorder. So, as time increases in an isolated system, disorder also increases. It statistically increases. Now, what is disorder and what's an isolated system? An isolated system is a system that doesn't share matter or energy with its surroundings. It's walled off from its surroundings. So it's just itself and whatever energy and matter is inside of itself. Entropy is a measure of disorder. So what happens when, for example, in reality, we see an increase in entropy, an increase in disorder. Uh, let's look at a bottle of water. It's clear water. The water itself is really just H2O molecules. Now, that's got a pretty good order to it. Now, you could take a bottle of dye, red dye, food coloring, and it's all red. And this has an order to it as well. So the water and the red dye are both highly ordered liquids. So they have low entropy. That is, they have low disorder. These are ordered things. So what happens when you put some of this red dye in this water? So we're taking some low entropy, we're adding it to some more low entropy. Let's see what happens. Now the red dye is slowly spreading out through the water. So it's becoming less and less ordered. The redness is being diluted by the water. You're seeing an increase in entropy or disorder. That's the second law of thermodynamics. This colored water is more disordered than the water and the red dye were originally. So you see the increase in entropy over time. Well, if you took a film or a video of that dye entering the water and starting to dissipate until it's at its present state, and you played that video backwards, you played it forwards, you played it backwards, from the video itself, you could always tell what occurred first and what occurred last. You could see what was earlier in time and what was later in time because you could see where the increase in entropy occurred. So you would always know that when you see the mixture, that you see an increase in entropy, which means this had to have been later because statistically, the universe, under the second law of thermodynamics, tends to increase in entropy in an isolated system. Now, this isn't an isolated system, but there's no real interaction of energy or matter going through this plastic bottle in this room. Maybe a little bit of heat, but not enough to affect what's occurred in what you just saw with the dye mixing with the water. So you look at that film forward and backwards, you can always tell what was earlier and what was later because of entropy. Now, so entropy tells us that the universe has an arrow of time because you can always tell the past because there's more entropy. So it is progressing from the past to a future that has less entropy. More entropy in the future. So you can always tell there's an arrow of time due to the increase in entropy over time in isolated systems. So you know there has to be an arrow of time. And all right, so there's an arrow of time. I've convinced you. What does that mean as far as the block universe goes and the infinite block multiverse? Well, it means this. Why is it that there's an arrow of time? We know there's an arrow of time. Entropy proves there's an arrow of time. We experience the arrow of time ourselves. But why is there an arrow of time? Physics says this arrow could go either way. So why does it only go this way? This is a big problem for the block universe. So if you're the block universe, you don't have any mechanism that can select which direction the arrow of time goes. There's no way for the block universe to decide that question. And yet it goes in this direction. Well, if the block universe can't decide which direction the arrow of time goes, then the block universe can't be real, because we know there's an arrow of time. Can't be real. Same thing with the infinite block multiverse. It's got the same issue. Can't be real. So the arrow of time proves that the block universe and the infinite block multiverse aren't real. The block universe is a mathematical model that works wonders with general relativity, but it's only a mathematical model. It's not real. Not to mention the fact that we only experience the present moment, not the past moment, not the future moment. So it sure as heck seems like only the present is real. Now, how is the arrow of time created? What creates the arrow of time? If it's not the block universe, what is it? Well, the answer is it's occasionalism, and it's God. I did a whole video on occasionalism, and you should watch it to understand what it means. But in a nutshell, what it means is that God creates, as a timeless act, the present moment, which appears to be a slice of the block universe, even though the block universe itself isn't a real thing. But because God has control over what appears in the present moment by creating it, then he can make it appear as if it were a block universe, because he controls every aspect of that slice of space-time, even though it is in fact not. The block universe is in fact not a real thing. It's just a mathematical model. So under occasionalism, God creates each slice of space-time, which we experience as the present moment, destroys it, and then creates the next slice of space-time. And this creation is done outside of time. These are timeless acts. They're connected because they are so similar to each other. Each slice is very similar to the next slice. And that's why we get this continuity of time and of reality, because they're so similar. Each slice is so similar to the previous one. But each slice is a discrete, created reality, which is then destroyed, and then the next slice is created. That's occasionalism. So, occasionalism allows God to create an arrow of time. So, God is what chooses what direction this arrow goes, because God decides what the next slice of space-time is going to be. Is that next slice of space-time going to exhibit the properties of entropy increasing in time? Yes. And that makes the arrow of time appear to go that way. The arrow of time doesn't go that way because the next slice of space-time isn't in this direction. It's in that direction. So God is the one who creates the arrow of time. And because you need God to create an arrow of time, then God must be real. There's no other way to solve the arrow of time problem. The arrow of time works perfectly with occasionalism. If you take a movie, if you think of physical reality as a movie film, you can play a movie film forward or you can play it backward, go in one direction or the other. But something's got to decide which direction it gets played. And the film itself, the block universe, can't make that decision. So the block universe can't be real. And it's not a movie film like the block universe. What it is it's God creating a unique, individual slice of space-time, destroying it, and then creating the next one. So it's not quite like a film, because all the frames don't exist. Just one frame at a time exists. That's it, and that's what occasionalism is. So there you go. Because there's an arrow of time, the block universe and the infinite block multiverse cannot be real. And instead, the only thing that explains the arrow of time is occasionalism, and occasionalism requires the existence of God, because some uncaused metaphysical cause has to create each slice of space-time, because there's nothing else in existence that could create it. So it has to be God. Nothing can't create it. Nothing from nothing, nothing comes. So you have to have God, and God has to be uncaused. God isn't part of the physical reality that is created during occasionalism. God has to be something that creates that physical reality. If God was physical reality and he created physical reality, then he would be creating himself, which is impossible. That would be circular reasoning, assuming the existence of physical reality to create God, who then creates physical reality. Now, that's illogical nonsense. So, the arrow of time proves occasionalism is true and that God is real. It also proves that the A theory of time is correct. And it also proves that the B theory of time is incorrect. The A theory of time is that the present moment is a real thing and the past and the future don't exist. They're not real. Whereas the B theory says the past, present, and future all exist. They're all equally real, and that our experience of time is just an illusion or a trick of the brain. The reality is the A theory is correct. The present moment is all that is created in occasionalism. That's why we experience it as the present moment. And that explains the arrow of time. So the arrow of time is a proof of God and a proof that the block universe and the infinite block multiverse are not real. I hope you learned something, and you should watch the other videos I've posted under the YouTube channel, Cosmological Arguments, and subscribe as well. Take care.